Hello, void and all who inhabit it. It's me, and I would like to speak with the manager. Another video inspired by terrible financial decisions. Someone has decided to give Kenya Barris the opportunity to produce yet another addition to the Ish cinematic universe. And viewer, I'm here to tell you we don't know why. But as groans rippled across Twitter, I thought it would be interesting to dig into the layers of this shit parfait, which I of course could not do without roping in the king of lifted lace himself, Tyler Perry. I will not, however, be roping Shonda Rhimes into this conversation. I bring that up because the last time I compared Tyler Perry and Kenya Barris' work, I did also mention Shonda Rhimes. However, she knows how to write. And more so, she has not relied on a gimmick to build her career the way Tyler Perry has with Madea or the way Kenya Barris has with the suffix ish. This is key to our conversation because I think the way these men built their careers is instrumental to why they continue to plague us today and probably will for several more years to come. Tyler Perry and Kenya Barris achieved their success and continue to get money because they made white people comfortable. Hear me out. Kenya Barris seemingly feels the need to present blackness in a way that comes across as educational, which white people eat that shit up. And Tyler Perry affirms a lot of comfortably accessible images of black people, both in terms of stereotypes, namely of black women, and in terms of acceptable social justice ideology. His Oscar speech is a shining beacon of what Hollywood is okay with in terms of critical race theory. I can imagine plenty of folks watching his speech at the Oscars and having a reaction of, wow, Tyler is so progressive, but I'm right there with him, you know? I can say that I was on the right side of history because I stood with Tyler Perry. Blah. But the greater connecting piece is that they both traffic heavily in respectability politics. Despite the differences in the types of black families their work focuses on, both Kenya Barris and Tyler Perry have a consistent message of this is how you should behave if you want to be treated such and such way. Starting with Tyler Perry being plucked by Oprah, the queen of palatable blackness. He has long had themes of righteousness and sanctimonious righteousness specifically in his work, from his plays that he's adapted to the series he's created to the movies he's produced. This holier than thou idea is often done through a plot which orbits around a black woman's suffering, but often the messaging is sent by the greatest self-insert character of the 21st century, Mabel Madea Earline Simmons. I absolutely believe that Tyler Perry is drawing from people he knows in the things that he writes. But his early work shifting to consistently include Madea as comedic relief, and especially her change from the plays to the screen, was probably helped by some executives saying,
"You know what really sells? You in a fat suit and a wig performing the characterized mannerisms of an older black woman."
There's a noticeable difference in pulling from your life to build a story that honors the people you know and people like them, and forming a character who's an amalgamation of familiar traits and serves as a heavy-handed plot device that you get to act as. I'm going to link a few articles that discuss Tyler Perry's depiction of black women in his films, and particularly Madea, because I think there's a lot to unravel and we don't have all that time here today to do that. Ma'am. But there are two somewhat opposing ideas that I do want to just have simmering in the back of your mind for our conversation. Joy James, who coined the term captive maternal, has an article comparing Madea of the Tyler Perry cinematic universe to Madea of ancient Greek mythology, and discusses how their violence serves as protection of the highest form of love. But she doesn't really unfold Tyler Perry's cinematic universe Medea's role as comedic relief. In Check With Your Man First, Check With Your Man, Tyler Perry appropriates drag as a tool to recirculate patriarchal ideology. Author Timothy Lyle considers how Medea may be less of a genuine reflection of older Black women and less of an exploration of the captive maternal, we might go further to say, and more of a means to not only infuse ideas more aligned with the patriarchy, but to do so through the voice of a man pretending to be a woman in a way that is not only detrimental to women, but to drag queens and the queer community as a whole. Beyond the content of Tyler Perry's work, however, it is its ubiquitousness that adds to how noxious it is. He is not the first person to explore or focus on these tropes, even in recent history. Before Medea, there was Hattie Mae Big Mama Pierce. But it is the stretch of Tyler Perry's reach, his positioning as the great Black hope in media, that means his impact is greater than Martin Lawrence's. Bro, this cat is really on some other shit. Thank you. As for Kenya Barris, he is making high-budget after-school specials on understanding the colors. In reading articles for this video, I found one that described Barris getting dressed for some meeting or something, and he says, "I don't want to be gaudy, but I do want to stand out." That desire to stand out, to be seen, translates so obviously to his television work, which is almost all inspired by his life, to the point of becoming didactic. I'm going to teach you what it is like to be me. It's not hard to find interviews with Kenya Barris talking about how he wants to keep Blackness centered in his work. And just like Tyler Perry, I believe him when he says that. But I think Kenya Barris is only interested in focusing on a very specific type of Blackness. There's an episode of #BlackAF where in his home movie theater, Kenya Barris is on a conference call with Ava DuVernay, Tim Story, Issa Rae, Will Packer, and Lena Waithe. I'm going to bring up this episode quite a few times because I think it is hilariously ironic, but just the setup of this scene alone illuminates that the Black experience Kenya Barris is interested in exploring is that of Black wealth and prestige. Throughout the episode, fictional Kenya Barris brings up the idea of creating a widely agreed upon standard of what is good Black art, how the standard would be set, who would be involved in its establishment, and how it would be enforced isn't fleshed out because it's not supposed to be. That's not the point of the episode. But this highly stylized version of Kenya Barris having this nugget in his mind that not only should there be a bar of what Black art is allowed to be praised or should be praised, but people like him and those on the conference call should be the ones to set it, is giving very much talented 10th. But with an added inferiority complex that means Barris is not only trying to shove his Blackness in the face of white people, but prove his Blackness to other Black people. In the article, for white people who have considered terror when privilege was not enough, the thrills of the white gaze, artists Karis Adams and Danny Giles and scholars Jen M. Jackson and Jared Richardson are in conversation about the impact of the white gaze on various points of art and culture, and at one point Kenya Barris and his work comes up. Richardson, referring to Blackish specifically, says, "These major network comedies that are supposedly for Black people actually feed off white fear and covet the widest audience possible in its attempt to make everything a teachable moment. Nothing can be opaque to the white person. Everything has to be so transparent when thinking about how Blackness is broadcast to a white audience in these situational comedies." Kenya Barris's work can feel so didactic because despite his desire to center Blackness, there is still a need to make the story digestible to wider and wider audiences. But again, I think there's also a layer of needing to show that he knows all of the things that also is meant to translate to Black audiences, but doesn't always. Not genuinely, not interestingly enough. It feels too educational. This article also makes a point about class and the focus on middle to upper middle class Black families in media currently, but the aspect of class in general is an undeniable layer to Kenya Barris and Tyler Perry's work. Kenya Barris leans into the long tradition of Black families only being portrayed positively if they are financially well off. Typically, if Black families are not shown as falling somewhere between the Winslows to the Banks, their poverty is shown as a moral failing. Poverty being a sign that you are a bad person is everywhere in US media. There is so much that wants us to see poor people as deserving of their suffering. And this is amplified when you consider the portrayal of poor Black people and poor Black families. So I get that as a Black creator, as someone creating a show about Black people, you might have a strong desire to swing away from that. But it is questionable, this desire to over focus on wealth instead of just humanizing poor people, you know? Tyler Perry does allow his poor characters to be good people, but only if they are humble and pious. And in fact, there is a common trope in his media of the woman who doesn't stick by her man while he's financially in the hole, and who is then filled with rage and envy when he finally reaches financial success after she's left him. The message is that she should have been okay with the temporary financial hardship, and she must be punished because she wasn't, because she was driven by selfishness instead of remaining humble and devoted. Both creators heavily factor class into their stories, but they do so narrowly. While Tyler Perry is saying these poor people are only worthy of attention in a story because they are humble and pious in their poverty, and maybe we can laugh at them as well, Kenya Barris is saying that these Black people are worthy of attention in a story because they are wealthy and financially well off. Ultimately, with Kenya Barris, we are presented stories that not only feel didactic, but feel like a means of validating a very small group that will often include Barris himself. I may be filthy rich, but I'm still Black. I still understand XYZ. It's a want to be exceptional, to be one of one, that gets mixed with the desire to not be stripped of other major identity markers, and the resulting combination really falls flat. All that being said, there are audiences for their work. There would have had to been, or they wouldn't have reached the level of success that they have. But the problem is that the entirety of Black audiences, the vast diversity of Blackness and what Black people want to watch, is being coagulated into just being represented by and interested in works by these two men, who are members of an elite group known as the Accepted Blacks Unit. The number of Black producers, movers, and shakers has grown, but it's still pretty low. And I would wager that the numbers are still low, not just because of gatekeepers, but because the people who have gotten their seat at the table are preventing others from joining them. I would absolutely believe that a lot of the folks at the top play into the same restrictive politics that made it so hard for them to get there in the first place, and are only looking to bring in other Black people, other people of color in general, who subscribe to the same stuff that they do.
You can only get an introduction if you buy into the same messaging that I buy into, that I schlep back to the people.
Instead of having a more merit-based system. Like, how many writers, producers, and or directors has Oprah handpicked since Tyler Perry? I'm genuinely asking, because it's not like the number has exponentially increased since his career started popping off. And that's not to say that Oprah is entirely responsible for changing the entire entertainment industry, but simply to point to her as an example of someone who has means, access, and resources, and yet who has still only done so much. You can contrast this with Issa Rae, who has at every step of her career reached across and back and has been vocal about the fact that she reaches for the people next to her and works to build space for the people coming in behind her. She is building a space not just for herself, but for other people to enter and maintain careers within the entertainment industry. Each one, reach one, teach one, and change the world, head ass. And perhaps most importantly, the way she is creating opportunity isn't just through, I'm making something, come work for me, but also through, you want to make something. How can I help you do that? How can we get something new by someone new? Kenya Barris has said that he isn't interested in being Hollywood's poster child for diversity and would instead prefer to be part of a movement. But how is he doing that? And not just in, is he creating opportunities for other people, but also what is the work that he is currently producing? While Kenya Barris has had a substantial career of writing for TV and films that center Blackness in a variety of ways, all of the stuff that he creates reproduces a very same message of centering wealthy Black families that are trying to stay Black and proud in predominantly white areas. Meanwhile, Tyler Perry doesn't hire other writers. I think he does now, as in like last week, girl, but Tyler Perry has spent years being criticized, rightfully so, for his refusal to hire a writer's room. And I think that decision has been in large part fueled by his own hubris, both towards his writing ability and towards the attention and credit he gets by being labeled as the writer and the producer and the director of every single one of his productions. He likes keeping the spotlight on him instead of diffusing it to share with others. The impact that has had on the stories he has created and continues to create on the studio and the production company and the empire he is building is paramount and inescapable. Sidebar, I think Tyler Perry's decision to pay beloved Black actors their worth and then some wasn't fully a decision made out of good faith. Actors are the most visual part of the entertainment industry for most consumers. So that is who you want singing good praises of you, because it'll be enough to get you a humanitarian award or whatever. Just speculation. But back to the low number of prominent Black producers. I see the continued investment in the Tyler Perry Kenya Barris mediocre media industrial complex as a sort of backlash. We hear you. We see you. You want more colors on the television. Well, don't worry. We got you with Ingrownish, a show about a racially ambiguous big toe. A network can seem to be addressing desires for diversity while doing all. And they would do this because both network television and streaming services have a vested interest in seeming to be the only or the best source for stories about Black people. Even if they aren't interested in creating good stories, they just need you to buy into the idea that you can find that here. Controlling the options, and more importantly, keeping the market small, means gatekeepers can control consumers much more easily than if there were several options that required consumer research. I don't know. If you can direct consumers, you can direct money. Netflix is actually the worst example of, here's some diversity, can you shut up now? Over the past 4 years, I want to say, they have been really egregious with the bullshit they have been producing. But notably, Netflix is becoming a safe haven for producers who are fleeing network television stations that are becoming more restrictive. It's very telling that 7 years ago, ABC was willing to invest in Kenya Barris and willing to give him the space he was looking for to write the story he wanted, but inevitably punished him for doing too much. A lot of the articles and reviews that came out when Blackish first started described it as bold, and to some people it still is, right? To a lot of people it was, and it still is. And we all start at different points, and I don't want to belittle someone for being at a different point than me, and I would hope to be returned the same kindness. But if Kenya Barris is as bold as we can go, and even that's too far, we have a problem. What we are seeing with the continued investment in Kenya Barris, in Tyler Perry, who, other than Airbnb being one of his many mansions out to depose British royalty, is still producing stuff, just at a slower rate. The investment in Lena Waithe even is the establishment of a limit. It is the gatekeeper saying,
okay, we'll let you in, but only so many of you and only to do so much.
And with the small leash they are given, the folks ain't doing much. Tyler Perry is a menace. We know this, right? Yes, he pays Black actors their worth, but what does it mean that the main roles Black actors can get, seemingly, that pay them their worth, are in stories that center around belittling and punishing Black women? I want the solution to be that other production companies are called to task and forced to pay Taraji P. Henson what she deserves, instead of Tyler Perry being seen as the best and only option to get media in a way that is fair to the Black people who are part of that production. But that requires a lot of work from a lot of people, and it is easier to just prop Tyler Perry up than to investigate, unravel, dismantle, and rebuild. Kenya Barris honestly seems to be at his strongest when he is a co-writer on other people's stuff. It'll be interesting to see what comes of these movies he is producing and creating, but his stories so far all have the same root, in a bad way. When the announcement for Cheaper by the Dozen came out, a lot of people were immediately unhappy. And while there is a big chunk of that is rooted in people being tired of seeing interracial relationships, there is some warranted wariness in how Kenya Barris depicts families who are caught in between two worlds. Again, Kenya Barris has a long career in screenwriting, with the shortest and most recent part being his duration as head writer and creator of television series. But even in this short part of his career, people are already tired of his repeated themes. I read up a lot about Kenya Barris while I was writing this script, and he seems like a nice man, lovely father, but he also seems like he's trying to carve out a space shaped specifically for him that'll be difficult to pry him out of, just like Tyler Perry. Through the creation of this just for me space, both creators have shown an inability and an unwillingness almost to grow, change, write something else, adapt, shift, hire a writer's room. The tangled up part of this is that while people are tired of their work, there is still difficulty in critiquing either one of them. The plot of the #BlackAF episode I mentioned earlier centers around fictional Kenya Barris watching a film by a Black director that he ends up hating but feels like he can't critique publicly. There's then this tension in the episode between supporting other Black people's work publicly versus policing each other's work or just critiquing it in general. But again, the idea of having and establishing a standard also pops up. However, the part of the episode that nearly catapulted me through the roof was the cameo from Tyler Perry. In their conversation, Tyler Perry says that he doesn't really care about what critics say because he's speaking to his audience in a shorthand that they understand, and that's what matters the most. In this scene, Tyler Perry is notably only talking about white critics. Like, he specifically says white critics at some point, which doesn't even make sense given that the conflict of the episode is that Kenya Barris wants to critique another Black person's work. But anyway, I wonder at what point this argument, this defense that white critics don't understand Black culture becomes a way of ignoring all criticism and critique, even if it's coming from other Black people. Because often the larger topics that Tyler Perry wants to cover aren't necessarily the issue. Like, having a film that shines a light on elder abuse isn't a problem. It's the execution, okay? The plot isn't there. The character development is not there. The wigs of high quality are not there. If that criticism is coming from another Black person, you can't hide behind the argument of, well, they're outside the group, so they just don't understand. Or maybe you don't hide at all. Maybe you just silence them. Regardless, the idea that critics don't understand what I'm doing, so they're not worth listening to, is a shoddy defense used to protect shoddy work. This episode also has that conference call I mentioned earlier, which, despite Kenya Barris, both fictionally and I guess through the construction of the episode, is advocating for public criticism, he appears to be somebody who is much more comfortable with private feedback conversations. And honestly, that is very much aligned with the message a lot of Black people get of don't talk about family business in public, right? If you were to share a grievance you had publicly, the embarrassment from other people knowing is worse than whatever your actual issue was in the first place. The clash of don't listen to what critics say, but also don't criticize anybody else Black in public is especially trippy, given that the fear at the center of the episode has had a great role in how Kenya Barris and Tyler Perry's careers have been able to thrive. They are not just able to fall back on the claim that they are overserving a niche, as Tyler Perry put it, but they're also protected from the concern other Black people have that public critique will have a huge negative ripple effect. If you tear me down, what will be left? The better question is, what groundwork is being laid so that we aren't dependent on the restricted content of the selected few? Again, Issa Rae is keeping the door open behind her. Her empire is growing exponentially by the day, and she's putting in the work to make sure that other people can fill in. Tyler Perry and Kenya Barris seemingly are only making space for the people they already know. It's two very different means with two very different outcomes. And admittedly, all the pressure and expectation cannot be on the creators and the producers alone. I was shared this Tumblr post from 6 years ago wherein the writer, Janae Bean, talks about essentially the entire history of television and how a shift in revenue sources led to networks quickly ditching content they didn't think would be profitable, aka canceling all the Black sitcoms. As viewers have shifted favor to streaming services and web series over network television, the doors to the entertainment industry have been wedged back open by new ways to make money. The gatekeepers are now forced to acknowledge the request for better representation that consumers have been making for decades because it is now profitable again to do so. And unfortunately, network TV and Netflix specifically continue to underestimate the audiences they are trying to profit from. They recognize that they have to do something different, but don't think the shift has to be that great, that viewers will be content whatever bullshit they put out there. And hate watching does help fuel this perspective. If word is spreading that new shitty movie has dropped on Netflix and everyone runs to go see it, Netflix doesn't care if you like it, because either way, 8 hours after release, new shitty movie is now top 2 and it's not number 2. So there's a drive to dominate the market with half-baked productions, because if you know people will go see it regardless of quality, why would you make it good? If you see consumers as desperate at best and mindless at worst, why not keep pouring money and resources and time into established voices who will make content that will guarantee you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of viewers with very little effort on your part? Hate it or love it, people will go see new Tyler Perry productions because it's Tyler Perry. They will go see new Kenya Barris productions because it's Kenya Barris. The connotations carried with their work are enough to drive people to at least check it out. And that's honestly all the platform needs. Thankfully, we have better options because thankfully creators have better options and are pushing to have better options. The idea of giving distribution rights to a platform that carries greater prestige or has a larger user base is no longer enough. If the point is to have your work be seen and or to be compensated justly, network TV and Netflix can kick rocks. Creators also can build interest in their work without the backing from major platforms, and unfortunately many of them have to because they aren't being supported and promoted by these major platforms. But the resulting support of audiences towards different storytellers and different platforms continues to prove that the investment is worth it, that yes, we do want to actually watch this. There's a push in both directions now. There are creators saying, I want my work to be distributed, to be accessible, to be presented without being censored by the powers that be, and I'm going to go where that can happen. And there are audiences that are saying, what you have isn't what I'm looking for, but I know what I want is out there, so I'll look for it instead of settling for what you have. Eventually, this model of shoving shit out the door and telling people that it's chocolate fondue because fuck else are they going to compare it to is going to crumble for all distribution methods, not just network, television, and Netflix. But going back to the names in the title of this video and the fact that I have been stressing and continuously questioning, what are you doing to build space for others? We need other people to invest in. We need to invest in other people to help continue that push of bringing in different voices and different stories. Tyler Perry and Kenya Barris and Issa Rae and Shonda Rhimes have all proven their worth literally and figuratively to the head honchos by creating content that has pulled in large audiences. They have made shows and movies that have drawn audiences back into spaces they were losing interest in, and that is power. But choosing to hoard that power for yourself and the few in your circle is ultimately fucking us all. Instead of using that influence to say, and these are the other voices, these are the other stories that audiences are craving to hear from, that need to be invested in, you are just turning up the volume on your own megaphone and drowning out anything different in order to continue listening to yourself. And we don't need that anymore. If you made it to the end, thank you for making it to the end. I feel like the past 2 months of videos have all ended with me saying, I should be doing something else right now. And I should. But here we are, okay? I was hoping my mic would pick up the cicadas, but of course they're not screaming today. Watch, I'm gonna go check the mail. Carcasses everywhere. Anyway, what's a upcoming piece of media you are excited about, or what's a piece of media that you've been excited about that you've recently got to enjoy? My book this month was Circe by Madeline Miller, which I read Song of Achilles a while ago, and so I had been wanting to read that, and delicious. I was dreaming about Daedalus for like 3 days. It was great. And then I have a request at the library for Actor Age Eve Brown, which I've been waiting a while, and I think I'm going to be able to get it soon, so that's exciting. But I'm also on the Greek mythology tip, as hopefully you know that I be on. There is another book called 1,000 Ships, I think, that is the Iliad from the perspective of all the women, so I'm also interested in reading that, because I partake in different types of media, and that Turkish series I mentioned last video is pissing me off, so I stopped watching it. Anyway, would love to hear your thoughts below on any of the things I've just spent the past XXX minutes talking about. yeah, I don't know what's coming next. I might be gone for like all of June because I have stuff I need to do, girl. Anyway, we'll figure it out. I'll be here when you're here. Until then, stay safe. I'll catch you in the next echo chamber.